Hello, good afternoon. My name is Rex, and for today, I will be discussing test validity. So, before defining the true meaning of validity and its aspect, I will give you a concept so that we can fully understand what validity is. So, we will have historical events that change the concept of validity. So, way back in 1970, merong case na nangyari. This is the case of Willie Griggs, and the company involved is Duke Power Company. So what happened here is there are 12 African American laborers, and ang pinakang main job nila as laborers is more on sweeping and cleaning the facilities. So dumating yung time that they decided to move to the ladder. So they are looking for a new promotion, which is they are eyeing for the position as a coal handler. So from sweeping and cleaning the floor, they wanted to move up and become a coal handler. So what the company did is gumawa sila ng test. So yung test na to is a general intelligence test. And those who will pass the test will get promoted. So meron silang required passing score. And the managers in this company thought that it will help the quality of workforce in their company. But kabaliktaran yung nangyari. Kasi the African Americans couldn't pass the specific and required passing score for the general intelligence test. So ito yung naging argument dun sa case na to, and ang pinag-usapan dito is yung validity ng test. Bakit? Yung position kasi is coal handler, and nagbigay sila ng intelligence test. So ano na agad yung nangyari dito? The test appeared to be ineligible kasi yung test did not measure specific job capabilities ng trabaho. So pagdating sa Supreme Court, ang naging ending is nakasuhan sila. Kasi nga, they, they scrutinize yung test validity na binigay nila, kung valid ba talaga doon sa position na coal miner. And this eventually become the basis of the Civil Rights Bill of 1991. So dito na nagkasimula ng validation ng different tests from simple test to psychological test. The concept of validity was formulated by Kelly in 1927 and stated that a test is valid if measures what it claims to measure. So, noong 20th century kasi, nagkameron ng different subcategories yung mga psychologists. Lahat sila may kanya-kanyang creation kung ano ba yung different subcategories or aspects ng validity. But in 1985, nagkameron ng joint committee yung American Educational Research Association, yung American Psychological Association, and the National Council on Measurement in Education, and nag-publish sila ng booklet entitled Standards for Educational and Psychological Testing. So itong standards na to, ito yung naging basis natin when it comes to the validation or validating the psychological test. So these standards actually were revised in 1999, and then again in 2014 nagkameron din sila ng revision. And the latest version of standards is organized into 3 sections. Yung tinatawag nating foundations, operations, and applications. There are 3 types of evidence that we will be discussing later. Ito yung construct-related evidence, meron tayong criterion-related, and content-related. So, ano nga ba yung trabaho ng standards? So, operations in the standards consider how tests are designed and built and how they are administered is scored and reported. So ito yung pinaka-main trabaho nung council, nung joint committee. The applications of section of standards takes on a wide range of issues. So ranging from training, required to administer, and interpretation of the test. We shall refer to the standards frequently because they provide a sensible set of psychological test guidelines that have won approval by major professional groups. So ano nga ba yung validity? What's the real meaning of validity? As I discussed earlier sa historical event na nangyari, validity can be defined as the agreement between a test score or measure and quality it is believed to measure. Validity is sometimes defined as the answer to the question. Does the test measure what it is supposed to measure? For example, if we are talking about test in intelligence, it should measure intelligence alone and not something else such as memory. So valid yung test mo if it is measuring the specific validation. Like for example, yun nga, yung intelligence and memory is magkaiba. So hindi na siya valid. According to city, state, and federal law, all materials used in assessment are required to be valid. Additionally, it is important for the evaluator to familiar with the validity of his or her testing. Kasi may ensure natin, pag familiar kasi yung nagbibigay ng psychological test or any test, may ensure natin yung appropriate diagnosis. And may iwasan natin yung misdiagnosing ng result. So, let's move to the aspects of validity. So, pag-uusapan natin yung tatlong validity, but I will also discuss yung face validity. Actually, yung joint committee refused to recognize yung face validity as a legitimate category kasi nga daw, it is not technically a form of validity. So, ano nga ba yung face validity? Face validity is the degree to which an assessment or test subjectively appears to measure. So, from the word itself, subjectively. Face validity relates more to what a test appears to measure to the person being tested than to what the test actually measure. So, yung face validity ay tinatawag ding logical validity. Ito yung simple form of validity where you apply a superficial and subjective assessment of whether or not your study or test measure what it is supposed to measure. Pwede na nating isipin na similar siya sa face value kung saan you will just skim the surface in order to form an opinion. So, example natin. Dayla is a new researcher nag-develop siya ng isang assessment which is meant to measure mathematical abilities. So, ang ginawa niya dito is she selected a sample of 300 students from 3 local universities and asked them to take the test. So, after the test was completed, tinanong niya yung 300 participants na mag-answer pa ng follow-up questionnaires. And then, tinanong ni Leila do sa participants kung ano ba yung purpose ng test, kung ano ba yung construct na they believe is being measured, or whether or not they feel the assessment was an adequate measure of their mathematical abilities. At the end of the assessment, Leila finds that most of the participants agree na yung assessment daw ay nagme-measure ng mathematical abilities nila. Kahit na wala siyang specific na validation na ginawa dito, wala siyang specific kasi nga it's more on like we're talking about the face validity of the test. So from face validity, we will move now to the content validity. So yung content, from the word itself content, it refers to the actual content within a test. Ano ba yung nilalaman nung test? It is based on expert opinion as to whether test items measure the intended skills. So, the content of the items, we need to remember, must be carefully evaluated. For example, test developer must consider the wordings, items, appropriateness of the reading level. So, determination of content validity evidence is often made by expert judgment. So, yun nga, yung pinakang content mismo ng test mo. Example, a mathematics teacher develops an end-to-end semester algebra test for her class. And the test should cover every form of algebra that was taught in the class. Kumbaga, dapat, kung ano yung laman ng test, dapat yung lahat ng naituro, dapat andun siya. If some types of algebra are left out, so kung may nawala, then the result may not be an accurate indication of students' understanding of the subject. So similarly, if she includes questions that are not related to algebra, the results are no longer valid measure of algebra knowledge kasi we're talking about the content here. Another example, nagbigay ka ng test sa history and they are expecting or ang laman ng test is World War I. But there is a content of Chinese literature. So when it comes to content validation, wala na siya kasi nga meron siyang different na laman compared dun sa World War I, which is yung Chinese literature. When it comes to construct validity naman, construct validity is the most important of the measures of validity. So according to American Educational Research Associate, construct validity refers to the degree to which evidence and theory support the interpretations of test scores entailed by the proposed uses of test. So yung construct, tanda natin, yung construct is something that happens in the brain. So hindi siya nakikita, basta ba unobservable siya. Like a skill, level of emotion, ability of proficiency. Proficiency in language is a construct. So the researcher investigating a test construct validity must formulate hypotheses about the expected behavior of high scorers and low scorers on the test. So for example, the PLS-5 or yung preschool language scales claims that it assesses the development of language skill. The PLS-5 has to meet the standards. So meron siyang standards set by the law and can be considered valid if it is assesses language skills. Kasi yun yung pinakang claims niya. It measures language skills. So, dapat ma-meet niya yung standards set by the law and can be considered valid if it assesses language skills of the target population with an acceptable level of accuracy. Yun yung construct validity. Pagdating naman sa criterion validity evaluates how closely the result of your test corresponds to the result of a different test. So, to evaluate criterion validity, kailangan mong i-calculate yung correlation between the results of your measurement and the results of the criterion measurement. If there is a high correlation, so kung may connection siya, this gives a good indication that your test is measuring what is intended to measure. So, magbigay tayo ng example mamaya. A university professor creates a new test to measure applicants' English writing ability. So, yung professor nagbigay siya ng test para i-measure yung English writing ability. To assess how well the test really does measure a student's writing ability, she finds an existing test. So, that is considered a valid measurement of English writing ability. So, nagkameron siya ng comparison. Yung test na binigay niya, yung na-create niya na English writing ability test is i-compare niya doon sa existing test that is considered valid. So, magkakameron siya ng comparison dito. Sa comparison, if the results of the same group of students take both tests, and if the outcomes are very, very similar, the new test has a high criterion validity. So, nagkameron siya ng comparison. And ito yung nagiging dilemma minsan. Some test constructors attempt to correlate their tests with other tests that have unknown validity. So, yun yung nagiging mali ng iba. A meaningless group of items that correlates well with another meaningless group of remains meaningless. So, pag nagkameron ka na comparison dun sa isang test na hindi naman valid, it's a nonsense. Wala din kwenta yung binibigay mong test kasi wala siyang criterion-related validity. So, in criterion-related validity, meron siyang dalawang um, types, which is yung concurrent validity and predictive validity. Sa concurrent validity, it is derived from one test results being in agreement with another test results, which is measure the same ability or quality. So for example, during the development phase of a new language test, yung mga test designers will compare the results of an already published language. So may kailangan nila ng comparison sa existing published language test or an earlier version of the same test with their own. If the results, tanda natin to, if the results match, as in if the child is found to be impaired or not with both tests, the test designers use this as an evidence of concurrent validity. When it comes to predictive validity naman, it refers to how likely it is for test scores to predict future job performance. Tanda natin, future job prediction of future job performance. Predictive validity is one type of criterion validity, which is a way to validate yung test correlation with a concrete outcome. So, lagi nating tatandaan, the main concept in validity is meron tayong three approaches. And nasisimbol natin, meron tayong associated respectively with content validity, criterion-related validity, and construct validity. So, una-una natin tandaan, at madali lang siya actually tandaan when it comes to validity. Yung unang-una is content validity. When it comes to content validity, from the word itself, content, we are just scrutinizing the test content. That's the content validity. Pagdating naman sa criterion-related validity, we are relating scores obtained on the test to another test scores or another measurement. So magkakameron lang siya ng comparison. Kung merong correlation or halos magkadikit yung score and same result yung nakuha ng mga test takers, meaning meron siyang criterion-related validity. And then yung lastly, yung construct validity, sila yung executing a comprehensive analysis. Kasi nga kanina 'di ba ito yung isa sa pinakamalagay construct validity. So comprehensive analysis of how scores on the test relate to other test scores and measure. Pangalawa, how scores on the test can be understood within some theoretical framework of understanding and construct the test was designed to measure. So yung tatlo na lang, yun lang yung pinakang tatanda natin when it comes to validity. So unang-una, the content validity is for scrutinizing the test content. Criterion-related validity is kailangan may relation, relating scores obtained on the test to another test scores. And then lastly, construct validity is executing a comprehensive analysis of how the score, so on and so forth. So yun lang yung pinakang keywords na dapat nating malaman when it comes to test validity. I think that's all. Thank you so much for listening and I hope you learned something in this discussion. Thank you and have a good night.